Welcome back to another installment of Ask Eddie. I am Eddie Muller, your host. I'm here with the Film Noir Foundation's Director of Communications, the lovely Ann Hockens. Ann, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine.
Okay, well, my day job is really stressful today, if we're being honest.
I am sorry to hear that, but there's a lot of stress, just in general. There's a lot of stress. I had, I'm going to confess, I had my first real serious pandemic meltdown the other day. My poor wife, Kathleen, I felt so sorry for her because we were having a really nice day on Sunday, and then I came home and I just, we just went on the weekends. We kind of just do errands. That's the only time we go out.
Yeah.
We like go to a farmer's market and we go to the store and we buy donuts and came home and I just lost it because I just said, is anything ever going to be normal again? And I was just miserable for the whole day. And that was the first time I had like a real serious meltdown. But I have bounced back. So I'm looking forward to our conversation here. I cannot believe how great the questions were the last time. So we'll see.
I know.
Yeah, we'll see if they're as good or even better this time around. So let's do it. Let's dive in.
Okay. Hello, Eddie and Ann. Is there such thing as truck noir? If so, do you have any favorite gems? Trucks would seem to be an apt trope for noir, with dark roads, shadows all around, weary and desperate men, hijacked plans, hidden contents, unseen curves, and vans fatales. For example, the forces that can hide inside like a Trojan horse, white heat, the risky cargo they can carry, sorcerer and wages of fear, the dangers associated with the business they drive by night and long haul, and the ominous pursuit of unseen operator duel. Do any like these fit into your noir collection?
All of the above?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's funny how many of these we have shown at various Noir City festivals, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't even mention in there Thieves Highway, which is, my favorite trucker noir. And of course, he did mention, we've shown Wages of Fear. We have not shown Sorcerer, William Friedkin's Sorcerer, which is one of my all-time favorite movies, period. A reimagining of Wages of Fear. It's not really a remake. I mean, the premise is the same, but he does it in a different way. And I loved that film. The one movie that I didn't hear mentioned in there is Cy Enfield's Hell Drivers.
Oh, yeah. I love that movie.
Made in England in 1957 with our dear friend Peggy Cummins. Not to mention Stanley Baker and Herbert Lom and Patrick McGowan and Sean Connery and David McCallum and Jill Ireland. I mean, that movie has all these amazing future stars packed in it, all driving trucks. Well, yeah. Peggy doesn't drive a truck, but and I guess now would we consider the Road Warrior movies to be truck films?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because Fury Road is the first time where you actually saw a woman or / women driving these big vehicles, and that was pretty cool. Anyway, yeah, there's definitely a subset of noir based around trucking, but I don't call it trucking noir. I tended to call it agri noir because they usually had something to do with bringing things to market. Like Mr. Majestic, the Charles Bronson movie directed by Richard Fleischer. That's a really good film about a guy who just wants to get his melons to market, and all the obstacles involved. So yeah, I definitely do, and obviously I can't recall, but I think he mentioned, They Drive by Night, and The Long Haul with Victor Mature, which we showed at the last Noir Festival that we had in San Francisco. on Victor Mature's birthday,
Yeah.
introduced by his daughter Victoria, and that was fabulous. And I think people were really kind of knocked out by that movie and how good it is, and how neglected that is, you know. But anyway, I love trucker movies.
Yeah. And I forgot to say that was question was from John Chamberlain. Okay, so what directors from the film noir era do you think would be most successful if they were directing films today? Thanks, Chuck Pickerel.
Okay, Chuck. I know Chuck. Chuck is a good man. Yes, Chuck works our merchandise table in Chicago when we do the Noir City festivals in Chicago. He and his wife Erica, they are just super great people. So thanks for the question, Chuck. It's a good one. Do you have any ideas on this one, Anne? Because I'm kind of
well, I was kind of thinking it sort of depends, because I was kind of thinking Sam Fuller, you know, because
totally.
Yeah, I just think that his films would still really work today. His style of filmmaking.
Anne, God, brilliant answer. Because I completely agree with that, because Fuller, even though he worked in the studio system, he was always an independent filmmaker. And you're absolutely right. I mean, towards the end of his career, he was making these wild independent films, you know, some of them not so good for various reasons that weren't his responsibility. But, you know, when you look at something like White Dog, which, you know, is so ahead of its time that people were terrified of it back then and said, we can't show this movie. And now it couldn't be more timely, but he is such an uncompromising filmmaker that they still probably would say, we don't want to show this movie even today. Yeah. You know, in a Black Lives Matters environment, he does things, you know, in such a way that he's not easily pigeonholed, which is what I love about him so much. Anyway, so if people don't know about White Dog, they should try to find that film, because it's a very daring, as a, you know, Romain Gary story about dogs that are trained to attack and kill Black people. And this young girl played by Christy McNichol gets one of these dogs, and it's a shock when it attacks these, and then she takes the dog to be deprogrammed. You know, a great performance by Paul Winfield as the deprogrammer. Anyway, that's a sensational film. Anyway, I'm going to just completely piggyback on your answer, Anne, and say that Sam Fuller is the guy.
Yeah. Okay, so this one's from Dan. After watching January's show and hearing it discussed, I watched the movie Pushover. I thought it was pretty good, but thought it was silly how much smoking was taking place. The two main characters played by Fred McMurray and Kim Novak were practically chain smoking. I've noticed this in other film noirs too. I know people smoked more in the past, but can't believe to that degree. And even if they did, why spend so much of the film's time on it? Was this done as some kind of stylistic expression, or was it more often a product placement thing?
Oh, I just blew my backlighting. That was bad. I can't do that. I can't move too much. You have to
be still. Don't.
I know. Move. I'm trying to do like the John Alton, like John Alton photographing Ellen Drew is like what this is supposed to be. You know. Okay, it was not product placement. I can guarantee you that, because Hollywood hadn't quite figured that out yet. They left that to the ads in the magazines, and the actors all got a little bump when they would do a Chesterfield ad or something like that. You know, 4 out of 5 doctors recommend sucking Chesterfield tar bars right into your lungs.
And radio shows.
But I can tell you, do we know who asked this question?
Dan.
Dan. I can tell you, Dan, it is no exaggeration. Everybody smoked. Yeah. Everybody smoked. When I was making my student film at the Art Institute, San Francisco Art Institute, my consultants. I had a lot of different locations and things, and I consulted with people who lived and were old enough to remember these locations and things in the 40s. And they all would say to me, there's not enough smoking. There's not enough smoking. Everybody has to smoke. I mean, and everybody did. So it looks weird to people today when you see everybody lighting up. I mean, if you watch Out of the Past, I mean, come on. I mean, the cigarettes are a huge part of that movie. I mean, they convey, Mitchum's entire thought process is conveyed through the way he smokes cigarettes in that movie. So it is not an exaggeration at all. I mean, the tobacco industry was one of the biggest things in this country and still is, despite all the efforts to curb it, you know, but not an exaggeration. And I got to tell you, there are movies worse than, I don't want to say worse, I'm not trying to be judgmental, but you know, Pushover is just one example. I mean, if you watch any of these movies, you know, I always used to joke that the Noir City Film Festival should be sponsored by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Because I don't even know if that exists anymore, you know, but that was truly, it truly was a thing where the government put those three things together: alcohol, tobacco, and firearms were under one federal jurisdiction. And there was a reason for that. So anyway, not an exaggeration.
Okay, and this one is from Fred. What about doing a restoration of Joseph Losey's 51 remake of M with commentary, etc.? And I know this wouldn't fall under the category of film noir, but rather pre-Cold Hollywood. But how about a restoration of Roland Brown's Blood Money from 1933, featuring a masochistic, nymphomaniac, kleptomaniac Francis D. I always wondered what hubby Joel McCrea thought of it.
Well, I don't know what Joel McCrea thought of that movie, but I love Blood Money. I love all those Roland Brown movies from the early 30s. He is one of the great overlooked talents of that era. And if you get yourself a copy of Scoundrels and Spitballers, the book by Philippe Garnier that I published last year, there's a fantastic chapter in there about Roland Brown and his brother Sam, with interviews from Sam and his daughter. So yeah, Blood Money would be, and also another picture he made called Quick Millions, which are just fantastic. And now I lost my train of thought because I was thinking about Roland Brown. The first part of that question had to do with
a restoration of Joseph Losey's 51 remake of M.
It's happened.
Yeah.
The Library of Congress did that restoration, and we have shown it, and it is available. I'm extremely happy to say. I think it's appeared on the Criterion Channel. I know that TCM has shown it, and that was a film that, you know, languished in obscurity for so long because people thought it couldn't possibly hold a candle to Fritz Lang's original film. But it's a really good movie in its own right. It needs to be seen just for David Wayne's incredible performance. And if you're a fan of the Bradbury Building, the whole end of the movie takes place in the Bradbury Building. And it's probably used more organically than any other film shot in the Bradbury Building, which just does like one or two shots to get the ambiance of the place. But this, they really are. They had the run of the building, and it's pretty remarkable. And yeah, I like that movie. But good news, you can watch that film anytime you want now. That has been restored. And that was not us, by the way. That was not us. No. That was not the Film Noir Foundation. That was the Film Foundation, I believe, that actually worked with the Library of Congress to restore that film. Although I may be giving credit where it isn't entirely due. That may have just been the Library of Congress that did it completely on its own with our tax dollars. Good use of our tax dollars, I say.
And where can people buy Spitballers?
At the Blackpool Productions website. Thank you very much, Anne. Yes, we do not sell. I'm very happy to say we do not sell that book through that guy's empire. But we have just gone to a second printing on that book. We sell Scoundrels and Spitballers only through my website, Blackpool Productions, and we sold out the first print run. And
awesome.
the reviews have just been exceptional, and I think it was really great because a lot of screenwriters and a lot of filmmakers found out about that book and really got behind it. And it's kind of rare to encounter a book these days that looks at Hollywood in the 1930s and it's filled with information that you did not know. And that has never really appeared anywhere else. So, you know, that's all Philippe's doing. I'm just amazed that nobody else in the United States felt it was necessary to publish that book in English.
Yeah.
And although Philippe is a friend of mine, it's like, seriously, nobody's going to do this? Well, I guess I'll have to do it.
Yeah, and also I just want to put a plug in. Also available from your site is his book on David Godis, which is really, really a great book. And, yeah,
I have to double check and make sure. I think that sold out.
Oh,
so
okay. I have an autographed copy.
Fantastic. I'm not positive. I think we sold out on all the Goodest books, but you know, we've gone to a second printing on Scoundrels and Spitballers. We went to a second printing on my Gun Crazy book, and we may very well do a second printing on the Goodest book at some point. So it's good. You know, we managed to find the people who are into this stuff. Those are the people who are watching us right now, you know, so.
Okay, so hello to you both, and thank you for the live stream. So educational, entertaining. I especially love Charlotte. She's so regal, though it sounds like her behavior is not. It is not. My question is not necessarily a film noir question, but with Eddie's vast knowledge of movies, maybe he knows the answer. As a youngster in the 60s, I distinctly remember a movie scene of a baby carriage careening down a set of steps outside of a building. When I searched the internet, it came up with Battleship Potemkin, but that wasn't it. It was more of a contemporary movie, so maybe from the 50s or 60s in black and white. And I remember only seeing the outside of the carriage.
Okay. These are always tough, you know, because here's the trick with this stuff, Anne. They say with Eddie's vast knowledge, he will know this, right?
Yeah. But
people's memories play tricks.
Yeah.
You know, so you may think the movie was in black and white. I don't know. I'm not telling this person they're wrong. People watching this may know exactly what this person is talking about. Who is the person who sent in this question?
Janine.
Janine. Okay, Janine. I mean, right off the top, as soon as it was like, well, that's Potemkin, but you would never forget that it's a silent film, right? I mean, Battleship Potemkin. But I immediately thought she was referring to The Untouchables.
Me too.
De Palma's The Untouchables, because De Palma does a whole homage to Battleship Potemkin in the scene in the train station where the woman with the baby carriage is in the way of Elliot Ness getting a clean shot at these guys on the steps, and then the carriage rolls down the steps and everything. I mean, that is just like one of the 5 greatest De Palma scenes ever. You know, it is so intricately staged and blocked out. It's and the way it elongates time, because everything that happens in that scene takes about 5 seconds, but it's like a 3-minute scene, you know. I can't think of another one though. I don't know of another baby carriage down the stairs scene.
Did not ring a bell. And I also wanted to point out, also in The Untouchables, he also does an homage to Party Girl.
I don't know that. Explain that one to me.
It is a scene where Robert De Niro's character with the baseball bat.
With the Capone.
That is totally Party Girl.
Yeah, where he beats the guy with the but this interesting you say that, Ann, because in 1957, Lee J. Cobb beats the guy with a pool cue, and in whatever the Untouchables, whatever year that was, De Niro beats the guy with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
So that says everything you need to know about where the society is going. It went from pool cue to baseball bat, and it's all based on a true incident, where Capone actually did that at a dinner. And I honestly can't recall whether it was a pool cue or a baseball bat. Yeah. But I remember, it's funny, I forgot about that. When I introduced Party Girl on Noir Alley, which was probably the most disliked movie I've ever shown on Noir Alley. I
love that movie.
Yeah, so do I. That's why I showed it, but it was just weird. Like, people weren't buying that. They weren't buying a musical noir. They didn't like Robert Taylor. And I thought that was one of Robert Taylor's best performances, really.
Yeah, it is.
And people were saying enough with the singing and dancing. And my complaint is there isn't enough. I wanted more Sid Charisse dancing and more of that stuff.
Yeah.
There's nothing in it that equals her in the Bandwagon, or but I do really like that movie. But the audience was just not willing to go there, which was really too bad. But that was funny because the guy that gets beaten in Party Girl with the pool cue was a professional wrestler who Nick Ray cast him specifically because he was really, really adept at looking like he didn't know he was about to be hit. That was the whole thing with that scene, was because as a wrestler, it was like you have to, you're it's all staged, but he was so good at like looking like nothing's gonna, great, and then whammo, that was kind of amusing.
Yeah. Anyway, I think everyone should watch Party Girl. I don't care what other people say. I like that movie. Okay, and this one's from Dan, Dan Akira Nishimura. I'm wondering about the old movies I watched on stations like Channel 9 in LA and Channel 2 in the Bay Area. Eddie has commented on discovering film noir this way. Were these generally 35 or 16 millimeter prints from the studios formatted for TV? Would local stations have their own film libraries?
Okay, good question, Dan. Hi, Dan, by the way. I hope you're watching. We miss you, buddy. Yeah. Dan has his regular seat at the Noir City Film Festival, and not just there. I see him in LA. I see him at the TCM Festival. Yes. So what happened was when television really took hold, the studios made bank by selling 16 millimeter copies of the films to network affiliate stations. And you have to remember that back then there weren't that many television stations, right? So like it was KTVU TV in Oakland, California, was where I saw a lot of this stuff. And then there were the UHF stations and all that. But yes, they would build a library buying 16 millimeter prints from the studios. And these were all, nowadays, these prints, and then what eventually happened was when everything got digitized, these stations sold off the films, and a lot of private collectors bought them, which was great because even though that was supposed to be illegal, it ended up being essential because films that would otherwise disappear, there were actually copies of these films in circulation, albeit in 16 millimeter. And you never want to do like restoration work or anything from 16, but if it's a lost film, sometimes you have no choice. Yeah. And all of those prints were TV prints, are known as TV prints, because everyone was made with the contrast lowered so that they would play on television without bleeding out. Because if they got too black, and this is especially true with film noir, if they got too black, the TV tubes would just kind of lose everything, and it would just become muddy. And I remember that happening a lot on our televisions when I was a kid. So they printed the films at a lower contrast so they were more gray, and you didn't have that bleed thing happen. But that's exactly how they did it. And so there were all these film libraries, and then there were some libraries were made just for that. You know, there were like film exchanges that were just TV prints, where people could get them to show on their stations and such. So that's exactly how that happened. Now, of course, it's all digital, and you don't have to ship prints around anymore, which is a great convenience. And you can also, these things hold together better now digitally today than when we first went to digital. It was kind of a mess. It was all over the map, but they've got a handle on it now, so it's not so bad. Anyway.
Okay, and this is 3 questions from John Feather. One, Vincent Price's Mark Cardigan in His Kind of Woman is definitely one of my favorite film noir characters. Who else would join him in the hilarious noir supporting character Hall of Fame?
That's so funny that you would say Mark Cardigan is one of my favorite noir characters when he is the antithesis of a noir character, right? I mean, he's the comedy relief. He's hysterical. I mean, Vincent Price is fantastic in that movie.
I love him so much in that movie.
Yeah, but I would not think of that as a noir character, but as comedy relief in a film noir. Yeah, definitely. I'm going to say Elsa Lanchester in The Big Clock.
Yeah.
Is like the female version of the Mark Cardigan character. You know, she's essential to the plot. I'm not entirely sure that Mark Cardigan is essential to the plot in His Kind of Woman.
Not really, but I'm glad that he's there.
Well, he ends up being the star of the movie in Act 3, right?
Yeah.
Which was all Howard Hughes's doing. That was not in the original script. But Elsa Lanchester in The Big Clock is just fantastic. And she's playing like a caricature of all of the New York Greenwich Village artist types that Kenneth Fearing, who wrote the book, who lived with Nan Lurie, who was a famous artist, they were having a little fun mocking, Greenwich Village artists in that film, and she's just sensational in that movie.
Yeah, and it's not exactly a comedic part, but I have to say in Laura, I mean, Waldo Lydecker is hilarious. I mean, he's really, really funny. He's such a bitch, and he's hilarious.
Well, I'm going to assume that everybody watching this has seen Laura.
Yeah.
So that raises a really interesting question. Like, how many films have the comic relief be the villain?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's kind of interesting, because he is a riot in that film, and then it turns out he's the culprit.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't happen too often.
Yeah, because you see that dark, because he winds up having a really dark side.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
But those scenes, especially when he and Vincent Price are going back and forth, are just priceless.
Fantastic.
Okay.
And I have to say, the Dana Andrews, Clifton Webb dynamic is so fabulous in that movie. We won't go into it too deeply, but it is this classic, taciturn straight man meets eloquent, flamboyant gay man.
Yeah.
And it's just genius.
Yeah, no, it really is. That's such a great movie. Okay, here's the second question. Recently saw Ben Hecht's Spectre of the Rose and loved it. Would love to hear your thoughts about it. Are there other noirs where ballet or opera are major parts of the film?
I like that movie a lot. It took a long time to be able to show that at one of our festivals. That was, but man, what a that was amazing. And you know, nobody makes movies like Ben Hecht. They're insane. In a way, his movies are sort of insane. For a guy who was a newspaper man and who had such a grounding in reality and the way the world really works, he had this obsession with writing movies, his movies, that had nothing whatsoever to do with the real world. And the flamboyant dialogue and the arch melodrama, they're not like any other movies made in the United States at that time. Really, nobody was doing that stuff. And I just love Spectre of the Rose. Well, you know, we showed it at Noir City with the red shoes.
Yeah.
So that begs the question, do you consider the Red Shoes to be a film noir, even though it's a ballet movie and it's in glorious color? I mean, one of the greatest color movies ever made. But it's a movie about obsession and this demonic, you know, character that drives this woman to death for her art, you know, and that's pretty freaking noir, if you ask me. So I'm trying to think if there are other, well, I mean, on a more recent level, there is Black Swan, which was, you know, differing opinions on Black Swan, but I do kind of feel that it does qualify as an art noir. Yeah. Which, you know, when we showed those two movies, Red Shoes and Spectre of the Rose, the theme of that year's festival was art. Yeah. And how artists are often depicted as obsessive, psychotic, neurotic, crazy people. Which fits right into the whole noir scheme of things. So I do kind of think of Black Swan as a bit of a neo-noir film. Any others that you can think of where dance or something is a big part of the, I mean, I'm not going to go so far as to say Party Girl qualifies, because as I said, Sid Charisse doesn't have enough dance numbers in that film.
Oh, I was thinking of Deception. Even though it's not, I mean, it's classical music, or classical music. It's not opera, but that definitely, I mean, that really centers around the music.
As does Humoresque, which again is really a melodrama, but it has such high noir style in the way it's shot that, you know, I've shown that as a noir film, even though I don't totally believe it. There's also, well, you know, the one that got away was Serenade, the James M. Cain novel Serenade, in which opera plays a huge part, but Hollywood could never deal with that movie, you know, or with that story. The homosexual part of the story, just, there was no way they were going to do it. And, you know, as much as I love Anthony Mann, his version of that is not good.
Because it's not like the homosexuality was a small part of the story. It's the driving factor of how this guy lost his voice, and I mean it's the backbone of the entire story. So, and it's really weird when you watch the film, because it sort of reminded me of when they did the movie Hannibal, and they changed because they didn't want to do the ending in the book Hannibal. So it's like the same thing. You're watching it and it doesn't like pay off. It doesn't, you know, because the entire story was structured around one thing. You want to take that away, and it just doesn't work.
And it's interesting to to realize how Warner Brothers tried so hard to do something with Serenade for so many years. And Ann Sheridan was going to star in it. And then there was this whole thing between Vincent Sherman and Michael Curtiz as to who was going to direct the movie. And they were kind of rivals at Warner Brothers. And it kept bouncing back and forth and back and forth. And then only when Mario Lanza became a star and was popular, then they decided to do it, but gut it. Yeah. And that's one of the things, like, wouldn't that be something to see of all of the classic noir novels from the original era that should be remade? I would say Serenade is the one that, like, now is the time. If not now, when? Yeah. And I have no idea if anybody has thought of that or is thinking about it or whatever, but that would be fantastic. They probably want to turn it into like a 10-part miniseries or something. Can you imagine? Like, James M. Cain novels are not made for long series. It's like they are made to be less than 90 minutes.
Yeah, no, I didn't really like the Mildred Pierce they did, frankly.
It's one of those things where
it was good, but
exactly. You appreciate it, but you don't actually like it that much.
No, not really. Plus, I mean, the girl is just too skinny. I mean, just at the end when she does that thing, which it's true though, like when she's walking naked, and then that's such a powerful thing from the book, and I'm just sitting there going, milkshake? I mean, and also, is she supposed to be a fucking opera singer?
Yeah, I know. It's hard. It's hard. I mean, that is one of those things where, like, you could try all you want. And I love Todd Haynes. I love his movies.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, there she is. It's time. Mr. DeMille, I am ready for my close-up.
Okay. What are you thinking? Okay.
Nothing. I'm just saying that, like, it's for the people listening to us right now. I mean, we are just preaching to the choir. It's like, please don't remake Mildred Pierce. It's unnecessary. Don't mess with the classics. Find the stuff that hasn't been done right. Like, don't do Mildred Pierce. Todd Haynes, why didn't you do Serenade instead?
Yeah.
That would have been. There's also another Cain book, Galatea, that I just, like, why hasn't anybody made this? This would be perfect. But they just want that name recognition, Mildred Pierce. Oh, Double Indemnity. Oh yeah, The Postman Always Rings Twice. But there are other books that are begging to be adapted that nobody has touched. So anyway, got off on a tangent there, but that's what we do.
Okay, this is really funny. Are there any Agatha Christie noir? And then there were none. It strikes me as possibly noir. Do you want me to answer this one again?
We did this, didn't we just do this?
Yeah, we were just talking about this last one because I brought up Agatha Christie when we were talking about women writers. So I'll just plug Crooked House and Endless Night. And then also, Nemesis, which is a Miss Marple, is definitely Nemesis. Actually, I would definitely say Nemesis.
You are so much more you are so much more knowledgeable about Agatha Christie film adaptations than I am, because my knowledge of her is And Then There Were None, and then all the Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile, all that kind of stuff. And I don't really know obviously Witness for the Prosecution. Yeah. But I don't know these not lesser, but the more obscure adaptations of her books. I just don't know. So you're giving me an education, Anne, which I appreciate. So
yeah, and I would also say, actually, interestingly, I think most of the Miss Marple ones are pretty noirish, which is kind of surprising because it's sort of this little old lady, but the way her mind works so the type of crime she solves, those are all those stories of hers have really, really dark motivations typically for the murders. I mean, you know, really dark murders.
One would hope so.
Yeah. But more than I mean, but driven by a dark passion as opposed to like just like for money or whatever.
Right.
And if people want to watch any of those stories, the ones with Joan Hickson, the original British series, are fantastic. I do not care for the ones they did later.
Okay.
Because they kept putting shit in there that wasn't in the original story.
And are these like readily available? Where do you find them?
Yeah, I mean, the Joan, actually I have, someone gave me the whole set of Joan Hickson ones for Christmas one year, which was very nice. That was my friend Tina. But yeah, they are. And I think they're also now up on, there's Acorn has a streaming channel now. And I think you can get like all the Perot's there as well as the original Miss Marples. But yeah, really, and the woman who plays Marple, Joan Hickson, is very good because she's an old lady, but she's like ruthless, a ruthless old lady.
Cool. Very good. Okay, I'm going to look for some of those.
It's good stuff. Leo asks, curious to know what you think about Elizabeth Scott, her acting ability as a B-movie actress versus Gloria Graham and Audrey Totter, and as the poor man's Lauren Bacall. So, but then she has a main question after that. Well, no, it's about her, so I'll keep going. But main question, I'm curious to know how since she died, do you know of any news about any new revelations, a book being written with more information about her? And if you have any information you want to share on her.
Okay. I don't compare her to Gloria Graham or Audrey Totter. I mean, my feelings about Liz Scott, I have kind of made clear in my book, Dark City, and also in the films that I've introduced on Noir Alley. She is fascinating. And, you know, she is sort of synonymous with film noir because so many of the movies she made in her prime were noir films. I think as an actress, she is as good as the director that she's working with, because she clearly is, you know, she has limitations. Let's just put it that way. As an actress, she has a lot of charisma and a lot of appeal. I think Pitfall is her best performance as an actress. But having said all that, the important thing is, yes, it's our colleague at the Film Noir Foundation, Alan Rohde, is actually working on a biography of Elizabeth Scott right now. Yeah, it's a contracted thing. So that will be forthcoming. I'm sure, you know, if you've read Alan's Michael Curtiz book, you know that he is a tenacious and thorough researcher. So, you know, I'm sure everybody has high expectations for that book. So that's a good thing.
Wow, that's exciting. I did not know he was doing that. Okay, so this is from John Michaels. We all know that Alan Smithy pseudonym was first used in 1968. Prior to that, the DGA had banned such practices for writers and directors. That doesn't mean it may not have been practiced, though. Are there any noir movies that writers or directors adopted a pseudonym? Any favorites come to mind?
Well, for people who may not know this, Alan Smithy was the pseudonym that was like one name. If you directed a movie and you decided that you got screwed and you didn't like the way the studio handled it or whatever, you could go to the Directors Guild of America and say, I'm signing this Alan Smithy because I'm not going to attach my own name to it. I don't believe that this is the case with any of the classic Hollywood films. For the longest time, I remember in younger days thinking that Brentane Windust was an alias, right? Because that's the credited director on The Enforcer, the Humphrey Bogart film, The Enforcer. And it was one of those things like with He Walked by Night, where suddenly everybody became totally convinced that Anthony Mann directed the film, not Alfred Worker.
Yeah.
Right? Which Anthony Mann directed passages of the film later, just like Richard Fleischer directed parts of His Kind of Woman after John Farrow left the film. For example, The Garment Jungle is Vincent Sherman and Robert Aldrich. But they both, I think, I can't remember, I think it was Vincent Sherman ended up getting credit for the film, even though Aldrich started the movie. But Brintain Windust is a real guy. I mean, he, so it's not, because for the longest time, people thought Raoul Walsh directed that movie. I don't know why, like whether there was a sequence or two that Warner Brothers called him in to like shoot some passage work. And then when people found out that Raoul Walsh actually worked on the film, they just decided Raoul Walsh was the director and Brintain Windust was some alias, but not true. He was an actual person. So I don't know if of any of the, or at least they're not popping to mind right now, of films where it was signed by somebody else or an alias because the director wanted their name taken off of the film. It is interesting though, isn't it, Anne, that sometimes like film lovers and scholars, and they just get this, it's like a snowball going downhill where people are like, Orson Welles really directed The Third Man.
Oh, I was about to bring that up because that one makes me so crazy. That makes me so crazy.
No, Orson Welles he's in the movie and he clearly inspired a lot of Carol Reed's directorial decisions in the movie. But Carol Reed, that's a Carol Reed movie. I mean, yeah. He did the whole thing, start to finish. And how insulting is it to say, oh no, Orson Welles directed that movie?
Yeah. No, it's funny you picked that example because that is the one that really, really, really drives me nuts.
Yeah.
And also, just for the record, Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, not Percy.
Yeah, we won't even get started with that.
Okay, this is, let's see, who's this from? This is from our friend Gordon Kitt. Would you name your 3 favorite inside jokes in noir films? Last month you alluded to the one in The Big Heat with Glenn Ford when Put the Blame on Mame was playing. So do you have any?
Man, that's tough. That might take some research. The one he's referring to is in The Big Heat, where Glenn Ford walks into the nightclub, the Retreat, or the bar, the Retreat, and they're playing Put the Blame on Mame when he comes in, which of course was in Gilda. Rita Hayworth's big number in Gilda, which Glenn Ford was in as well. I don't know. Recently, I introduced The Bodyguard on Noir Alley with Lawrence Tierney. And there's a scene in the early part of the movie where he says, you know me, I never get in fights. and that was clearly inserted by the writers because, I mean, Tierney was always getting arrested for being in barroom brawls, right? So that was like a little in-joke they threw in there. That one, I'm going to have to think about that. Now I'm going to be on the lookout for these in-jokes. It wasn't something that was that common, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, the Bigamist Ida Lupino's film that she, which is a great film, so everyone should watch The Bigamist anyway, but she puts in a couple in that one, which is kind of interesting. And they're really, they're just kind of in there. But I think she was just kind of taking advantage of this one character living in LA. So there's some like Hollywood jokes in there.
Oh, but how could there not be inside jokes in that movie when with all of the connections between the actors, and that Joan Fontaine was at that point married to Ida Lupino's ex-husband, Collier Young, and all that stuff was going on. You know, and I'm sure that Private Hell 36, I mean, I don't watch the movies for the inside jokes, but, you know, Howard Duff is in that. And he was then married to Ida Lupino, but Ida Lupino is having the affair with Steve Cochran.
Yeah.
And as we've discussed on these episodes previously, no one got away from Steve Cochran, you know? So I can only imagine, that sounded awful, but I can only imagine like Steve Cochran thinking, am I going to like have an affair with Ida Lupino right under Howard Duff's nose making this film, you know?
No, but there is, which I've posted before on our Instagram account and on our Facebook account. Maybe I'll find it and post it again after this one broadcast. But I have a really great photo of Ida Lupino and Steve Cochran, and they're on a couch on the set of that film, and she has her feet up in his lap.
And you know, there's the famous publicity shot from that movie where the guys have their shirts off and she's sitting, and it's like, it's really rare when you see the men being treated like the sex objects in a publicity photo, you know, that, and like there is no scene in the movie like that. There's no scene like that. So clearly this photographer is like, Steve, take your shirt off. And I'm sure Steve was like, you want me to lose the pants too? You know, you know, that was Steve Cochran. But Howard Duff was probably like, are you serious? Like we're gonna do this? And I'm sure Ida was like, yeah, why not? Let's do this.
Sell the film. So I'll put those photos up after, like, I'll do it the Friday after this one airs, and I'll put those pictures up on Facebook so people can see them.
Very good.
Okay, and as a corollary, Noir films often have a female singer. Why? Do they advance the narrative and add to the style? If so, how? Or are they simply showcase vehicles for the talent?
And who asked that question?
Gordon.
Oh, that's Gordon again.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, Gordon. I mean, he's kind of answering the question himself when he says, are they just showcases for the talent? I mean, that was, by and large, that was true. But it's not that it's not the singer that's as important as the location, because nightclubs are a huge part of film noir. Mm-hmm. And I have written about this often. I mean, nightclubs represented the midway point between the underworld and the normal world. And most of the times these venues were owned by guys who were gangsters looking to go legit. I mean, when you watch enough noir, you realize that's entirely what's happening in all these things. And it was a great way, if you're in a nightclub, how do you say you're in a nightclub? What makes it different from a bar is that there's a stage performance, right? Yeah. So they would very often give this over to either the actress who was allowed to have her moment, her spotlight moment, singing a song. And I won't even give examples because they're so prevalent. Or in the case of something like Crisscross, where they had Isai Morales and his rumba band performing in the club, which makes it a club and not a bar. So it's really the prevalence of nightclubs that makes this such a thing in noir. And then, of course, just how could any director resist the temptation to, you know, dress up a beautiful chanteuse in, you know, in a spangly gown and have her do a number in the club. And yes, I'm sure there were instances where like this was built into the contract, like she has to have a number, you know, and blah, blah, blah. And that's why I always felt sorry for Liz Scott, because She did this in innumerable films.
Yeah.
And never got to use her own voice.
Yeah.
Right. Which is why she eventually cut an album in the 50s to prove to people that I can actually sing. Okay. But it was, they always dubbed her. So weird. But then, you know, they dubbed a lot of these actresses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Marnie Nixon got to sing for Anita O'Day, and you know, they all were doing the vocals for these actresses.
Which is so funny because, you know, it made me think about Roadhouse and Ida Lupino in Roadhouse, who's so incredible and doesn't really have a particularly good particularly good singing voice.
Oh, she does more with no voice. Yeah, right. Isn't that Celeste Holmes' line in the movie? She does more with no voice than anybody I've ever heard. You know. Yeah, but that's how great Ida Lupino is, right? Yeah. She said, "Oh no, I'm going to sing these songs," and I believe she got hits out of both of them. You know, One More for the Road, and Again. Those two songs were both kind of hits with Ida Lupino singing them. God love her.
I know, she's just the best. Okay, this is from Steve, has two questions. Opening scene with the chain link fencing around the body of water in The Tattooed Stranger. Is this the same New York City location in opening and closing scenes of Marathon Man, where Dustin Hoffman is jogging?
I don't know.
Huh?
I don't know. Somebody who's watching this, let's hope that you can help out on this one, because if it was set in San Francisco, I would know the answer. If it was set in LA, I might know the answer. But if it's set in New York, I probably don't know the answer. So I'm going to count on somebody who's watching this who lives in New York who might know if the opening scene of The Tattooed Stranger was shot in the same place as the scenes in Marathon Man. And that would be like where Dustin Hoffman's running.
Yeah. So it's at the opening, closing scenes where he's jogging at the start and exiting in the final scene.
I have no idea. Damn. I hate to not know the answer, but I don't know the answer.
And this one is his second one. I wake up screaming. Are we hearing Somewhere Over the Rainbow instrumental in the background? If so, why do you think the score was selected, since the tune was a major part of a popular movie 2 years earlier? I know the answer to that.
Okay, let's have it, Ann.
They owned it.
They owned it. For whatever reason, they owned it. I mean, it's really weird. They owned it and they just used the hell out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, when I introduce, I've learned my lesson. When I introduce that movie to a live audience, I don't mention the Somewhere Over the Rainbow thing at the top of the film, because it is all you will hear.
Yeah.
If you are attuned to it, that's all you're going to hear. It's like, Christ, they're using this again?
Yeah.
Again. I mean, it is like an earworm in that movie. And I don't, and they do it, they try to do it artfully, because they do it in, you know, different tempos and different styles and all this stuff, but it's still the same tune until it's just like in your head, you know. But yes, they owned it. Obviously they owned that music and they were going to max out on it. So
okay, and this is from another Janine. Hello, I'm interested in knowing the impact of foreign films on noir, specifically Japanese and European films. Were those areas producing films in the noir genre at the same time as the US was? Thanks for everything you're doing for noir and classic films in general.
It's impossible to say who's influencing whom in these situations, but yes, every country that had a film culture was doing something equivalent to noir. But let's face it, you know, in Germany, they were making noir. In Japan, they were making noir. In France, they were making noir. As we've shown in Buenos Aires, they were making noir. In Mexico City, they were making noir. But they didn't make, those films didn't get the worldwide distribution that Hollywood movies got. So everybody assumed the major influence was the Hollywood product. But if you like, next month, I'm going to be showing Pepe Le Moco on Noir Alley. And, you know, that movie, right, 1937, it's completely a film noir from France. And Jean Gabin's whole style in that movie is setting the template for the noir anti-hero, right? Before Bogart did it. So yes, this definitely, but then it's just all over the place, and it's impossible to say, you know, who influenced whom. What's important is to recognize that these influences existed, and you can't say that noir belongs to any one country.
Yeah.
That, I mean, that's what I take away from it, you know. And this is honestly the thing that keeps me going and keeps my interest, you know, what hones my interest is to find stuff that is noir that nobody really knows about. Like, you know, this month I'll be showing Native Son on TCM as part of Black History Month. And like, that's a film noir. That's totally a film noir made in South America in 1950 because it couldn't be made in the United States. And, you know, that stuff is fascinating to me. You know, you probably saw me introduce Dragnet Girl, the Japanese, the Ozu film at the San Francisco Silent Film Festival. And, you know, that's completely a noir that was obviously inspired by Hollywood movies.
Yeah. And also he did a film called, I think it's called Wife for a Night. Is that right?
I have not seen it.
Yeah. But it's also very much like that. Very, very noir and very influenced by the films at the time from Warner Brothers.
Well, I would probably say that of the probably the United States, France, and Japan are probably the countries that have produced the most examples of film noir.
Yeah.
You know, Germany, Italy, England, Argentina, Mexico are all have produced quite a bit. But, you know, the US, France, and Japan are the three main ones in my estimation.
Yeah. Okay, so this is from Doug. Rope is generally considered one of Alfred Hitchcock's lesser pictures, but I personally think it's one of his most underrated films, and that James Stewart gives an excellent cast against type performance. What do you two think of it, and do you consider it noir?
Yeah, there's no way you cannot think of it as noir, given that the protagonists are murderers and trying to get away with this thing. It's such a novelty movie. I hate to say that, but it is a novelty movie. And I'm going to confess, whenever I watch that film, I just think, what would this be like if Hitchcock didn't do it this way, but did it like a normal movie? Yeah. I can't help but think it would actually be better. Yeah. If he just gave up on the single takes, you know, and the gimmick aspect of it.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, I think the film is underrated, and I think it's better than it gets credit for being. But I think it could have been even better. Now, the thing I have to share. Who asked this question?
Doug Crinsland.
Okay, Doug. Here's the thing, Doug. The thing I have to share about this, because this is like insider info that only I know. Because we paid tribute to Farley Granger years ago in LA, and we showed Rope, and Farley said, you know, John Dahl, who was his co-star, and they were both gay.
Yeah.
And Arthur Lawrence, who wrote the screenplay, was gay.
Yeah.
And Alfred Hitchcock knew all of this,
Yeah.
And this is clearly what he was doing. He wanted to make a movie, you know, but Jimmy Stewart didn't really get it. And Farley said, you know, Jimmy just didn't, he had no idea what this movie was about. None. He just didn't understand that there was like this thing between the two guys, and that they like were like so in love with their professor and wanting to, you know, impress him and all this. Like, he just didn't get it. And he said, you know, John and I and Arthur, and Farley Granger and Arthur Lawrence were actually in a relationship at that time. They all said, we just wanted James Mason to play this part. If James Mason had played the Jimmy Stewart role,
oh my God,
it would have been like the gayest movie ever made, right? Not that James Mason was gay, but
no, he was not.
You know, Farley Granger was just saying, like, we had to act like we had a secret attraction to Jimmy Stewart when we felt nothing.
Yeah.
But if you had cast James Mason, it would have been obvious.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny.
Okay, I'm so glad they asked that question just so I could hear that story. That was an awesome story, Eddie. And also, I agree with you. I think with Rope, I really like that movie. And, you know, so funny because I just sort of ignore the fact it's being done in one take.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Set that aside.
In a series of takes.
Yeah, well, series of takes, but, you know, as one continuous piece. But I think it's, I just really like John Dahl and Farley Granger so much in that film. I mean, I think it's two really great performances. And I also love the older woman. Well, both the older women in that, but
I'm embarrassed to say I'm drawing a blank on that.
No, but it's funny because that's her whole thing. When she's trying to remember a movie title, she can't remember the movie title. So this is appropriate that we can't remember her name. Okay, this one's from Sean Moore. Has there been any known efforts to get a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for John Alton?
I hope you realize that those are paid for. Stars on the Walk of Fame are paid for, and there are lobbying groups who raise the money. It's kind of, I mean, I shouldn't be negative about this, but it's kind of a little thing in Hollywood is like its own little municipality inside Los Angeles, right? Yeah. And they do this to raise money for the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. They sell those stars on the Walk of Fame. And if you think there's anybody that's going to raise back in last time I checked, it was like $50,000 was the buy-in. And if you think there's anybody who's going to raise $50,000 to give John Alton a star, I would rather the money be spent restoring lost John Alton movies, right, than giving him a star on the Walk of Fame. You know, if you know your John Alton history, the tragedy of his later years and the fact that he got bilked out of all of his money and his caretakers stole everything from him. I mean, it's a totally noir story and really, really tragic that will not be, you know, ameliorated by a star on the Walk of Fame, I'm sorry to say. Certainly deserving, but I would rather the money be spent restoring his films.
Excuse me. Oh, and P.S. from Sean. If North City ever came to my town, Apex, North Carolina, we'd have to change the town slogan of the peak of good living to the bleak of good living.
That's fine. The peak of good living. Yeah. That's the town's motto. That's great.
I guess so.
That's great.
Oh.
That's like out here. Redwood City is climate best by government test.
Really?
Oh yeah, God. Redwood City heralds that it has the most livable climate in the United States. So it says climate best by government test.
Oh my God. Okay, this one's from Dave. Here's my question for Eddie. Are there rules as to what elements must be included in a movie to make it a noir? If so, sorry. Oh God, if so, what are any notable exceptions to those rules? If not, what are some examples of films that lack some of the cliched elements but still succeed or just miss?
Well, here's the thing, Dave. It's art. You know, it's not a science. And so you cannot ascribe ingredients and percentages of ingredients. It's an art, and it's the way the art is applied by the artists. Okay, so there have been tendencies in the past to try to nail it. I have never subscribed to that. There's like the metric system of noir, like you have to have the femme fatale, you have to have a certain percentage of scenes at night, there has to be this, like all of these ingredients that add up to noir. Okay, so there was a guy, I'm trying to remember his name, who did a book on noir a few years ago. It wasn't a bad book. Mike, I think his name was Mike Keeney, I want to say. And he applied this metric system to noir. And in the end, the movie that came out being the most noir, that checked the most boxes and was like, this is noir, was The Mask of Demetrios. Now, if you asked people, tell me what noir is, The Mask of Demetrios is going to be like the 100th film that gets mentioned, right? So that's why I don't subscribe to this. I mean, it's Double Indemnity.
Yes.
Right? It's out of the past. I mean, those are the two films that are noir. I mean, if you had, 3 hours to live and somebody said, I wish I knew what film noir was, you're going to show them Double Indemnity or Out of the Past. That's it. You're not going to show them The Mask of Demetrios. That's so, yeah, I don't put a lot of stock in these, it's just like when you learn how to cook and then all of a sudden you don't need a recipe because you just know how to cook.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, and guess what? If you like this, you put more of that in. If you don't like it, you put less of that in. And that's exactly how I look at these films. You know, it's like, if you love the femme fatale, you're going to say it's not film noir unless there's a femme fatale. But of course there can be noirs without that character, because what other artists are doing is saying, I'm going to flip that story.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to have the woman be the protagonist, and I'm going to have a homme fatale instead of the woman. And it's like
or in Mildred Pierce, when the femme fatale is her daughter.
Her daughter, exactly. So it's artists inspiring each other and then subverting the very things that inspire them. Yeah. This is what makes it so wonderful. And that's why we continue to talk about it. You know, we're getting like, at 76 minutes or something right now on this episode, because everybody loves how there is no answer. You know, it's like we're talking about this stuff, but we don't have the answer to any of this, right? I mean, unless it's when the questions are very general about what is film noir and what do you think about this and do you have to have that, that's all general. If you ask, what movie was it where this guy did this and shot that guy, that's a totally different thing.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, the reason why I laughed at that halfway through reading that question is just, it's just like one of the things that like drives me nuts when, I'll post about something, maybe it's gonna be on TCM or whatever, and there's always people saying, oh, that's not a noir. And sometimes it's something that's patently a noir. Like, what are you talking about? So it's just kind of funny,
but it's also weird, Anne, because I can't quite I mean, I am right in the eye of the hurricane.
Because you're, yeah.
And it blows my mind, like, what is it that's upsetting people when you show a movie and it's like, that's, you know, they get angry.
Yeah.
Like, that's not film noir. And it's like, well, okay, but I chose to show it because I think there's value in this movie. You know, there are a million different reasons why you would show something. If everything had to qualify 100% as film noir, you're just going to be showing the same, you know, 80, 90 movies over and over again. You know,
Yeah.
but the point is that the noir movement inspired people to do things in a different way, so that they would take a kids movie and they would do it in a noirish way. You know, if you look at Night of the Hunter, that's a child's fairy tale done as a noir. Or Talk About a Stranger, or Shadow on the Wall. These are kids movies, but they're film noir. And for somebody to say that can't be film noir because a child is the protagonist, it's like, you're not really getting the whole idea of artistic inspiration. You know, you're not grasping that, you know. Anyway.
Yeah, and I think too, I mean, and also just from a, you know, for someone who goes to Noir City every year, like, if you just showed such a limited scope of films, I'd be going out of my mind. I mean, you know, I thought about this because it was Super Bowl Sunday, and that's always my favorite day of Noir City, because you always program something really offbeat, because you figure, like, no one's going to be there, who cares? But that's always my favorite doubleheader, is always whatever you show on Sunday. Because
remember the day it was Super Bowl Sunday and I showed like 6 Dashiell Hammett movies.
Yes, I was there.
Right? I mean, that was so much fun. Because, and man, we had to dig deep to get like Roadhouse Nights and Mr. Dynamite and, you know, these totally obscure things. Rick Lehman, the world's foremost scholar on Hammett, came all the way from like North Carolina for that day, because he said, how did you find Mr. Dynamite? I mean, that was like, anyway, that was pretty cool. But yes, I understand. That was like the day we would counter program.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, if you're, this is not for even, if you're a football fan, just stay away. Just stay away. But I have to confess, you know, there have been times on those Super Bowl ending days of the Noir City Festival when the 49ers have played in the Super Bowl. And I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm a sports fan. I love my sports. Where I'm backstage, like, following the game on my phone, you know, and that Super Bowl where the 49ers played the Baltimore Ravens and there was a power blackout in the stadium, and I'm like, this is going to screw up the entire schedule. And I was backstage going to introduce the next movie, and it's like the 49ers are driving down the field to score the winning touchdown, and I had to go on and introduce the movie, and I never knew until I came off stage that they lost. So. Oh, well.
Okay, so do you want to do one more, and then I think we're gonna have to like do another one of these.
Yeah, because this is an hour and a half again. Oh. Jesus, how do we do this?
They're good questions.
They are good questions, and you know, I hope people understand that, you know, when we get rolling here, it's because we like these questions. They're good. So one more, and then we'll schedule another talk.
Okay, and this is from Heather in LA. Dear Eddie and Ann, has a noir ever moved you to tears? Even if not, what do you consider the most heartbreaking noir? Happy Valentine's Day.
I'm going to let you go first. Do you have one?
You know, I was trying to think about it. Is there a noir that really just like where I'm really sad at the end? And I just felt like there's something I can't think of. Like there's something that's really obvious that's not coming to my mind.
Well, I can tell you right off the bat, it's In a Lonely Place for me.
Yeah.
And it's not just that the end. I don't cry at the end,
Yeah.
right? Because I brace myself now for that ending, which is the heartbreak of that ending is interesting because nobody dies.
Yeah.
Right. Except poor, the poor hat check girl,
Yeah.
Martha Stewart. But there's just something so heartbreaking about the failure of their love between Dix
Yeah.
and Laurel that I find that very, very moving. But I always cry every time I watch that movie. I tear up at the scene of Bogart and Art Smith in the bathroom after he hits him in the face, when he gets angry with him and he smacks him in the face and knocks his glasses off. And then they make up in the men's room after that.
Yeah.
There's something about that scene, did I cut you? Did I hurt you?
Yeah.
And then it's like, you got to get a new tie, that is such brilliant writing. And it talks to the depth of their relationship between like an agent and his client, and the pain that Art Smith absorbs from this guy.
Yeah.
That always, I always get kind of choked up watching that. Another one that gets me is The Suspect with Charles Laughton and Ella Raines. At the end of that movie, to me, it's a very emotional thing that he isn't going to get the woman that he did all this for. And he's, you feel something for that character that you don't feel for a lot of other noir, you don't feel that for like Garfield in The Postman Always Rings Twice, or Fred McMurray in Double Indemnity. You don't really feel for them. They're like, hey, dude, you knew the risk when you took it, and screw you, but that Charles Laughton character in The Suspect, when he commits murder for the sake of this young woman, and then it doesn't pan out, and it's very subtle, but that's kind of heartbreaking in a way.
And I found the first time those two characters meet in that interaction, I found really touching. There's just something really touching about their relationship in that film. It's very moving. And I think also for me, the sad part of Double Indemnity is really that last conversation, between Edward G. Robinson and Fred McMurray. That's the emotional part of that film. And that really is like,
because isn't that truly, I've said this many times before, but isn't that truly the love story in the movie?
Oh, definitely. Absolutely.
It's a father-son thing between these two guys. It's like the mentor and the protege, and the disappointment that Edward G. Robinson expresses at the end of the film is profound. That's really profound. And I can't tell you how smart that was, that they didn't put the ending on that movie where McMurray is killed in the gas chamber, because it's so much better the way it is, and just letting these two guys play that scene together, it's amazing. And one last thing about The Suspect, which I understand is finally coming out on Blu-ray.
Oh, great.
Which is, one of the great neglected and underrated movies. Robert Siodmak thought that was the best film he made in Hollywood. Right.
Wow.
And he made some great films. Right. But the tragedy of that movie is, and this was made in 1944. The tragedy of that movie is in an older man and a younger woman not being able to have this platonic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
She so admires him for all the reasons he wants to be admired, but there is something so catastrophically tragic about that setup that the older man with the younger woman, it's just not going to work. There's no way that that's going to happen, you know? And I mean, obviously it happens all the time on different levels, you know, because people are after something different. But with those two characters, it was just this sad misunderstanding. And oh my God. Yeah, that to me is a heartbreaking noir.
Yeah, anything Christmas holiday.
Another great Siad Mac film.
Yeah, and that one really, that ending is so, yeah, that one does it for me. And I think also, frankly, you know, The Breaking Point, just because of the kid. I mean, that thing with the thing with the kid at the end is just, yeah,
which is really interesting because in that case, the heartbreak kind of comes out of left field.
Yeah,
you sort of, and which is what I love so much about that movie, is that you're tracking the story of Harry Morgan, the character played by Garfield. You're tracking that story and you're so on his narrative that moment where the gangsters kill Wesley, right? Juano Hernandez, it just goes by, and they play it that way. It's not that they don't care, but like you're in the moment, and it's like you're following Garfield's story, and from that moment on, everything he does is about his reaction to them killing his best friend. But there's no mention of it ever for the rest of the way until Wesley's son shows up on that dock, and it literally rips your heart out. That is without question, and that is the most heartbreaking final shot in film noir, but I might even say in general, in any film I've seen, that is the most heartbreaking final shot.
Yeah, because I think it's really also what you don't really get in films at all, even now, is the reality of the impact that violence has on people. You know, it's always geared towards the moment and the action and that. But when things like that happen, when people get killed in real life, that's the real impact. You know, children lose their parents. And it's just, and it's like that slap of reality after this sort of, you know, crime, adventure, drama kind of thing. And it's, and that's like the sting in the tail of this is what really happened. I think it's great.
It's interesting. I think as we are recording this, TCM is showing The Breaking Point right now. So no one has an excuse for not having seen it, because you should have all watched it, and then you'll know what we're talking about. But The Breaking Point, more than most film noirs, I think The Breaking Point has this soulful depth to the relationships between the characters in that movie that in a way separate it from a lot of other noir films. Yeah, there's a crime element and everything, and I can't tell you how much better the movie is than Hemingway's novel, which I've read a couple of times, and it's just it's not really very good, I have to say. The Heretic, but the movie just has an understanding of the dynamics between people that is not as well expressed in the book. Anyway, I guess that should wrap us up, right? I mean, you can't top that. The end of The Breaking Point is you're done. You're done.
Exactly.
You can't talk about anything else.
I think that was perfect. Okay, so it looks like we're recording another one of these. So
we don't want anybody's question to go unanswered. So we will do another one. And as usual, I will say, man, the questions are great.
I know.
It's so gratifying that A, people watch this, but B, that they have such a that they keep coming up with all these great questions, and sustaining all of this has just been fantastic. So
yeah, I just feel like the questions just keep getting better and better.
I agree. I agree. So, you know, we invite people to submit, you know, anything really, because I don't have to coach these people. They obviously know what they're doing. So just keep them coming. Keep them coming.
And in case you're sort of new to what we're doing here, so if you subscribe to our monthly newsletter or email, so you sign up on our emailing list, which you can do at filmnoirfoundation.org, filmnoirfoundation.org, and we solicit the questions through our monthly newsletter. So in case you're wondering, how do I get my questions?
Yes, and I just want to quickly tell people, please send the questions to Ask Eddie, right? Whatever the thing is, it's like Ask Eddie is it at filmnoirfoundation.org?
Yeah,
Ask
so don't respond back to the newsletter.
But sometimes people send the questions directly to me.
Oh, okay.
Right?
I did not know that.
But if you want them to be answered in this format, don't do that. Send them to Ask Eddie at filmnoirfoundation.org, because then they will be in the pipeline.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing I'm going to say, Anne, before we sign off, I'm totally caught up on Better Call Saul.
Oh, great.
I've seen all 5 seasons now.
I'm so excited because I wanted earlier when we were talking about songs, Winner Takes It All. I swear to God, that is the best use of a song I have ever seen in a piece of fiction. Winner Takes It All. And at one point in that episode, it's actually, there's a music version playing in an elevator.
Yeah, oh, there's my John Alton. It's fantastic. And I just want to say, the writing is extraordinary. And if ever there was, you know, evidence of this stuff I mean, I get it. Vince Gilligan is the guy behind it, and he's a genius. But it is such a collaborative effort. And I was amazed to see how many women are involved in the production of that show in all creative aspects, right? Yeah. Writers, directors, absolutely fantastic. The grasp, and Odenkirk is amazing, because you know there's stuff in those scripts that he just completely, I'm not going to say he improvised, but the scenes were his idea. When Jimmy gets to really just, you know, the bingo game, you know, where he has the total meltdown when he's at the old folks home, is just absolute genius. And anyway, the whole thing is great. And I have to say, Ray Seahorn is beyond belief how great she is in this show, because the character is good, and she makes the character what it is. But I never see her acting. I mean, I don't know when I don't know when I've seen a character in a show where it's like, I actually believe this character exists. Yeah. Like if I go to Albuquerque, I'm going to go and get represented by Kim Wexler, because she's for real, right? Yeah. I mean, I know that Saul Goodman is a fictional character, but I actually believe that Kim Wexler is a real person. Yeah. Because there is not a single false moment in her performance through the entire 5 seasons. Not one false note. Yeah. She is extraordinary. And I love the show. Obviously, it's clear I love the show. Yeah. And it's like the most beautifully directed show, because they will do incredibly cinematic, crazy things. You know, the montages, and, you know, just out of nowhere, they'll do this stuff, and it doesn't feel forced. It feels very creative and part of a a whole organic thing that they're doing. And I can't say enough about that show.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely
it's a
fantastic.
show where like everything serves the story, which is what I like about it. Also, there is actually a Better Call Saul podcast where the creators of the show talk about each episode.
Oh.
And it comes up like each day after the episode airs. And so they'll talk to the writers. It's a lot of the writers are usually a big part of the conversation and stuff. And I also just really want to put in a plug for Patrick Fabian, who plays Howard Hamlin, because I think he's really brilliant. And it's so great because this was the first thing I'd seen him in. You know, I looked at his, and he's a jobbing actor. This is a guy who's been in like over 100 different things. And it's so nice when someone like that gets their, after that long of a career of doing that kind of work, of actually getting something like this where they're really, you know, the co-star of a series. This is really exciting.
Well, I completely agree. And, you know, he's so mastered that guy's physicality, his stiffness, and that rictus of a smile, you know, when he's giving that totally insincere smile that looks like it hurts. It physically looks like it hurts when he does that. You know? But also, you know, Jonathan Banks and Giancarlo Esposito and Michael Mando, you know, who plays Nacho. And Tony Dalton, who plays,
he's incredible.
You know, they're all just fantastic. And the balance between the super intense drama and then the comedy that Odenkirk brings, which is all in character. None of it is breaking character. It's really a work of genius. It truly is. So thanks for keep harping on me until I watched the show. Then I couldn't get enough of it, you know?
Yeah.
And and now I feel bad because I binged it, and now I'm going to have to watch it, you know, installment to installment when it comes back for the 6th season.
Yeah.
And you really get spoiled being able to just watch one episode after another. You know, there was one night when I think I watched 6 in a row. And it's like, seriously? I just watched 6 hours. Like, what movie is 6 hours long? But it never flagged. I mean, and also the other thing that's great, we're driving people nuts with this now. But the other thing that's so amazing is it's non-linear storytelling. You know, I mean, you can follow the threads of the present stories, but the flashbacks and the flash forwards that come out of nowhere. It's like, what is this? Why is he working in a Cinnabon shop all of a sudden, you know? And they just leave it to the audience to figure it out, you know, which I absolutely love. It amazes me that we live in a time where there are TV shows and movies that are literally spoon feeding stuff to people like they can't understand the simplest narrative devices. And then you see Better Call Saul, and it's just like, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, here's a black and white scene where he looks totally different, and we're not going to give you any idea when this is, where this is, whatever. You'll figure it out. And it's remarkable that they just stick to their guns that way. And like, this is the show we're making, live with it. Yeah. And it's fabulous. Okay, we're done.
We're done.
Okay, Vince Gilligan, you can send the check to Eddie Muller at... Joking. Can't wait for the new season. Okay, Ann, we'll see you whenever I see you the next time.
Yeah, we'll figure it out, and we'll see everybody soon.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers.